guys, so welcome to my second video. So if you watched my last one, you would know that I did like a video on what I think are essential eye brushes that I personally like to use to complete an eye look. So for this one, I figured I would do another like an educational based video, but I would do more of like complexion based brushes and what I think would be good to complete a look for your complexion, aka like your face. So let's go ahead and get started. And when I do the brushes, I'm going to do them in order of like what you would do your face. So for instance, like foundation, powder, bronzer, etc. So the first brush that I have to talk about is this one here from Morphe, and it looks like this. So this one is going to be a foundation brush, and it's very small. I like how it's rounded right here up at the top. I personally don't like flat foundation brushes, but it's just really preference, so it's whatever you like. But like I said, what I like about this one is that it's round. It's going to be smaller, so it's going to fit nice in smaller areas of the face. And I guess I didn't give you the name, but this one is the Morphe Y10. So like I said, a nice round brush for foundation to get in the smaller areas of the face. It also blends out really nicely. I didn't experience any issues with like streaking or anything like that. So this one's a really nice one. So I have another brush like that Morphe one that I just showed you, and it's from Morphe as well, except for it's going to be like bigger, like the bristles are going to be bigger. I'm not going to show that one though, just because I started using that one for my self tanner, so it's like all janky and green and like the bristles are falling out and it's disgusting. So I'm not going to show that one, but I will list it down below along with all of the other brushes that I mentioned, just because if you're curious, and you can like click on the link and check it out for yourself, because some people may prefer like a bigger foundation brush versus like the smaller one, etc. So the next brush that I have to talk about is this one from Sigma here, and this one is the Sigma F25 tapered highlight brush. So it looks like this. It's going to be smaller, and what I like to use this one for is to get underneath of the eye. If you like to set with powder underneath of the eye, like if you're setting your concealer, it's nice because it fits nicely under there. It has like that tapered point up at the top, so it's going to fit in nice like smaller areas. So I specifically I used to use it for that. If you like to use a brush, you know, to set your face with powder, then this one would be a nice option to get under there. Another thing that I like to use it for is like I personally set my eyelids with like a loose powder after priming. So I'll dip this in my loose powder and put this on my eye to set my eyelids. Another great way that you can use it is like if you're reverse contouring and you have powder, you know, like stamped underneath of here, I like to take this brush and dust away that powder. So I get like a good like amount of uses out of it. So I personally recommend it, especially if you like to set underneath your eye with powder with a brush specifically and not a sponge. I transitioned to a sponge, so that's why I don't use this under the eye anymore, but I still really like it. So the next brush that I have to talk about is this one here, and it looks like this. This one is the Sigma F25 tapered face, and you'll notice that it's about the same as the one that I just showed you here. This one's just going to be a lot bigger and a lot fatter. So specifically what I use this one for is taking a pressed powder, and I set, you know, the perimeters of my face with it. So I'll go in with like a loose powder and my T-zone, but then I like to take a pressed powder and set the, you know, the outer perimeters of the face. So that's what I use this one for specifically, and I only use this one for that. So it's not really a necessity, but I just wanted to throw it in here just to show you what I use it for and, you know, what I personally think it's good for. So I recommend this one if you like setting your face with like a pressed powder, or you know, like setting like the outer perimeters of your face where it's larger, because this one will do the job really nicely because it's bigger, so it can take up a bigger area. So the next brush that I have to talk about is also from Sigma. I have a lot of Sigma brushes for the face. Practically all of them are going to be Sigma brushes, so don't hate me. They just have really nice brushes. But this Sigma one is the F20 large powder brush. So it looks like this here. And with this one, I like to use it for my bronzer. It also does like a really nice job with contouring too, just because of the way that it's shaped. It's not super flat, but it's still flat to where it like fits in there nicely. But yeah, like I said, just use it for like a bronzer brush, or you know, like a contour brush. It just fits nicely onto those cheekbone areas, fits nicely up onto the forehead. So I really recommend this one for it, and it blends it out really smoothly. So this one, use every day. I love it. So the next brush that I have to talk about is the Sigma Flat Angled Kabuki, and this is the F88. So it looks like this. It's just a very flat top, and it is angled. So I'm mentioning this one because if you like to do more of like cream bronzer, because some people prefer, you know, creams over powders. Now I personally like powders, but if you like a cream, this is a nice brush to use for cream bronzer. I've used it for cream bronzer before, and it just like stamps the bronzer on really nicely and blends it out really smooth. So I just wanted to throw this one in here just because if there's anybody who's watching who prefers creams over powders, I would really recommend this one for like a cream bronzer. So the next brush is from Morphe, so we're switching it up a little bit. So this one is the Morphe M523, and it looks like this. So this one is a little bit flatter and a little bit rounder. And this one is a nice contour brush for powders. I don't really contour anymore. I normally just do bronzer. But if you like to contour, this one is a nice one for that because it fits into the cheekbone area really nicely. Like if you feel like you have like that hollow like in your cheek area, this fits really nicely in there, so you get that nice contour. And it actually blends it out really nicely too. So I really recommend this one if you like contouring. I've never had an issue with it, so this one's a really nice one. So the next brush, I've never mentioned this brand before as like for all my brushes that I have. So this one is from the brand Makeup Geek, which I love Makeup Geek. Their eyeshadows are amazing and they're really not that expensive, so a really nice brand. And this one is technically called the Cheek Highlighter Brush, but that's not what I use it for. But it looks like this here. So this one I like to use for like if you're going to do any like cream contouring. This one blends it out really nicely because it has more of like those white like natural hairs like up at the top. So it's gonna help blend out that cream contour and sheer it out just a little bit. But this one's a really nice one to get that cream contour blended out. I personally don't cream contour ever. I've only done it like a couple of times. It's just not something that I do just because powders are so quick for me. I can just throw it on, blend it out a little bit and not have to worry about working the creams in and making sure everything's blended. Don't get me wrong, cream contouring and bronzing is beautiful because it can look, you know, very skin-like and natural. I just personally don't do it that often, but if you do like to cream contour, I really recommend this one because it blends the cream contour out beautifully. So my next brush that I have you may recognize from my last video that I just did, and this one is the Sigma E45 Small Tapered Blending Brush. So it's this one here. So technically an eyeshadow brush, but I also like to use this one for the face as well. So I'll put my bronzer on this and I'll go underneath of my lip right here to put a little bit of a shadow there to give the illusion that I have a little bit of a fuller bottom lip. I also like to take this and go down the sides of my nose with my bronzer. Not necessarily for contour purposes, but just because when I have everything else bronzed, I just feel like the center of my face, like in my nose area, just looks so like white. So I feel like I need a little bit of color there, and this brush does a really nice job of blending it out. It's very small and precise to get down the sides of your nose, underneath of your lip. So this one I get lots of use out of because if you remember in my last video, I use it underneath of my eye when I'm blending out color. But I also use it for the face as well, so I really recommend this brush. It's very nice for multiple uses. So the next brush that I have is this really pretty one right here. It has a sparkly handle, and this one is from Real Techniques, and this one is the 303 brush. So it looks like this. It's very pretty. It has like purple at the top. It has pink, and the handle is very sparkly and pretty. I don't know if they have this one anymore. I got this one, I think, last summer, I believe. So if they have it, I'll look for it and I'll list it down below. If not, I'll find something that's very similar to this, same shape and everything. But what I specifically use this one for, and again, this one is not going to be a necessity. I just like to use it about like every day for, you know, one specific purpose. And I use this one for reverse contouring. So if like when you do your contour or even like your bronzer, and if you feel like you've brought it down too far or you got a little sloppy with it and you want to sharpen up the contour or bronzer a little bit, take a brush like this because it's, you know, stiff enough to grab onto powders. You'll dip it in a pressed, or not a pressed powder, but a loose powder, and then you'll take it and stamp it along your contour. So then you'll leave it sit, and then that'll create a nice sharp edge. And then that's when I go in with this one, the Sigma one that I talked about earlier. And then I'll wipe away that powder after I leave it sit for a little bit so it creates like a sharper edge. So that's the only reason I use this one for. I personally recommend it. It's not a necessity, but if you want something like this to where if you ever, like I said, if you ever feel like you want to clean up your contour, your bronzer a little bit, this one is really nice because it's dense enough to hold on to powders and it's dense enough to stamp it on. All right, so the next brush that I'm going to talk about is a blush brush, and it is this one right here, and this one is from Sigma. This one is the Sigma, I can't read it, the Sigma F10 powder slash brush, for a brush, powder slash blush brush, tongue twister. So just like it says on the handle, just a blush brush. I like it, it blends it out nicely. It puts the color on nice. I don't really have to blend my brush out with oh my god, I keep saying brush, blend my blush out with another brush to make it smooth. This one does a really nice job on its own. I like the shape, so overall just a really nice blush brush. So the next brush that I have is going to be another blush brush, and this one is from Morphe, and it is the E4. So it looks like this. So I included this one in here because I used to use this one all of the time. So this one's just going to be more of an angled brush. So if you like that type of style, this one's really nice. It puts color on really nicely. It blends it out nicely. It just gives you more of that angle to where you can go up into the temples a little bit and it'll be a little bit sharper. I go back and forth between the two. It just depends on, you know, what mood I'm in. Like for a while I was using this one. Now currently I'm using this Sigma one, and then I'm sure after I get sick of this one I'll go back to this one. So they're both really nice. It just really depends on the style you like. Or if you want to get both, you do you, you get both. Alright, so only two more brushes left. So this one is the Morphe M501. So it looks like this here. So it's just a little small brush. So this one I specifically use it for highlighting. So it fits really nicely on top of the cheekbones right here. It fits really nice in the Cupid's bow, you know, on the tip of my nose. So that's the only purpose I do with this one, is just specifically for highlighting. It's not too big, it's not too small. I feel like it puts the perfect amount of highlight on. So if you're in the game for a new highlighter brush, I really recommend this one. This one's really nice. Plus, keep in mind, Morphe is super affordable too. So, I mean, you're getting really, like, pretty decent brushes for a pretty good price. But like I said in my last video, some of their stuff can be hit or miss, but the ones that I'm listing in this video, I like them. Alright, so on to the last brush. So this one is again from Sigma, and this one is the F75 concealer brush. So it looks like this. It has a little point up at the top there. So this one I don't specifically use to blend out my concealer under my eye. I just don't prefer using a concealer brush. If you like to, that's completely fine. But what I use this one for specifically is for cleaning up my brows with concealer if I mess up, or if I need to sharpen out the tail a little bit, or if I have like a liquid lipstick on and it's just not as smooth around the edges as I would like. I'll take this into some concealer and then I'll, you know, go around my lip line and smooth that out a little bit, and it's, you know, your concealer is going to be like an eraser essentially for smoothing out like your brows or smoothing out your lip line. And what's nice about this one is that it has that point there. So if you want to get more precise with it along the point of, like, not the point, but along the tail of your brow or along your lip, it's really nice because it can get that precise with that point. So I really recommend this one. But I don't know how it performs as far as blending concealer out underneath of the eye, just because, like I said, I don't use a brush for under the eye. It's just not my thing. So I mean, you can always try it out if you're interested in it and you do get it, but I really recommend it for cleaning up other areas of the face. Okay, and so I lied, I have one more product left that I forgot about. So it's not technically a brush, but I'm throwing it in here because it is part of a Complexion product, and it is just the Beauty Blender. So it's just like this. I'm sure you've seen it before. They have a bunch of different colors. I have a few different colors. They say that they're not different as far as like the sponge and how they blend out and stuff, but I have to disagree because I feel like the black one is my favorite. That one is so smooth. It blends everything out so smooth. The pink one is pretty good too, but whenever I've tried like this turquoise one, I feel like it's more like porous. So I feel like my foundation wasn't as smooth, but they swear they're the same. But I think the dye or something like messes with it a little bit, but I don't know. I could be wrong, but that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, so this is what I like to use to blend out my foundation and concealer. I never used to be big on beauty blenders as far as like for my foundation. I always used a sponge for my concealer. But lately, within the past year, I have been using the beauty blender for my foundation versus a brush. And when I went back to trying my brush, I just did not think it was the same at all. I felt like I had to work it in a little more to get it blended. But when I use this beauty blender, it just blends it out so smooth. It presses it into the skin nicely. It just creates like a nice smooth canvas. And if you've never used a beauty blender before, you'll want to use them damp. So it'll be like this size when you get it. You put it underneath of the sink, squeeze, 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 and then it'll grow a little bit in your hand. You'll squeeze out the excess water, and then you'll go in with it damp. Going in with it damp is going to provide a little bit of extra hydration, and it's going to help sheer out the foundation a little more. So if you have like a foundation that's really thick, like for instance, like Kat Von D foundation, her Lock-It foundation, that's a very thick consistency. So going in with something that's damp, like a beauty blender, will help sheer it out a little bit, so you won't have an easier time, I guess you could say, getting a cake face. Brushes versus a sponge, the brush is going to put on more and not going to soak up as much as what the sponge is going to do. So if you want full coverage to wear something that's very high pigment, high coverage, use a brush. You'll get the most pigment out of your foundation with that. The sponge, like I said, it's going to shear it out a little bit. So if you don't want it to feel, I guess you could say, like as heavy or look as heavy, I would try the Beauty Blender. I also use the same Beauty Blender for my concealer. You use it damp, it fits underneath of the eye nicely, it has that point, it can fit in small areas nicely. So I personally really recommend Beauty Blenders. I think they're really nice. And of course, there's also cheaper options as well if you don't feel like spending, I believe, what is it, $20, $22 for a single sponge. I know for some people that's not in their budget, they're like, ridiculous. Why would I pay $20 or $22 for a sponge that I'm just gonna end up throwing away in like a few months? If you want a cheaper option, Real Techniques also has affordable options as well. I think they're in the $7 range. I could be wrong. I can list it down below. But I've used those ones before too, and those ones are still really nice. And with those ones, I believe they have like a little, like they're like pointed up at the top, but I believe the one side, instead of being rounded, it's more flat. Okay, so my camera shut off on me again. So, like I said in the last video, if the coloring is different or the angle is different, that is why this is going to happen every single time I film. So let's just be real with ourselves. It just likes to overheat. It's not like a camera that's meant for filming for long periods of time. So it's just gonna overheat. So I apologize in advance for the rest of my videos. But back to what I was saying about the Beauty Blender, is that I use it for my concealer as well. It's nice because it fits in small areas of the face. So if you want to get around your nose with a point, I also use it for my foundation. It blends it out very beautifully. Now, I know I talked about the Real Techniques sponge. That one's a very affordable option. So if you don't feel like paying $20 or $22 for one single sponge, the Real Techniques one is pretty nice as well, and that one's going to be more affordable. I believe, don't quote me, but I believe it's in the $7 range. I could be wrong. And even during like holiday time, you can get like a bunch of them in a pack for a decent amount as far as like the price. And another one that's really nice that I've used before is the Morphe sponge. And that one's going to be similar to the Real Techniques one, except for, I know before my camera shut off, I was talking about, I think the Real Techniques one it's pointed, one side's round, and then I think one side has an edge that's flat. I could be wrong though, but I'll list it down below. But I know for sure the Morphe one does have a flat side, so you can go in and even use that to reverse contour with your powder. And then I even use this sponge for my loose powders as well, to set underneath of my eye, versus going in with a brush. Like I said, I used to go in with a brush for my powders, but I've been using my sponge for, I would say, the past year or so. When it's still damp, I'll dip it into my loose powder and then I'll press it into the skin. But I still go in with this big Sigma one here for my pressed powders on the outer perimeters of my face. But specifically for my loose powders, I use my sponge. I just feel like it creates a smoother canvas. It blurs out the pores more, and it really presses the powder into the skin. So if you don't have a sponge, or if you've never used one before, I definitely recommend trying one out. See if you like a sponge versus a brush, and then you'll be able to pick and choose from there on like what you want to use for your foundation, concealer, etc. It's really all about experimenting and personal preference. So just experiment, find out what you like. As far as also like the Real Techniques and Morphe sponges, if you decide to get those ones instead of the Beauty Blender one, those ones you also use damp. Same concept, put it under the sink, squeeze, it grows in your hand, squeeze out the excess water, and then you're going to want to dab, no matter what sponge you use, you're going to want to dab the foundation or concealer into the skin versus swiping. Swiping is just going to wipe it away, it's just going to sit on top of the face, it's just not going to work. If you dab it into the skin, it's going to push the foundation or concealer into the skin, so it's going to sit on the skin better. So, Beauty Blender, Real Techniques, or Morphe sponge, they're all pretty nice. So that's all of my brushes in, I guess, my sponge talk for this video. I just want to show my cute little brush holder. Isn't it so cute? Don't you love it? I think it's so adorable. I found it at Target and I think it was under 10 bucks, I think. But I think it's so cute for a brush holder. It just looks so girly, and it looks really pretty on top of like a makeup desk or like on a vanity. I will link this down below too because I love it, and I'm sure there's somebody else out there who loves it, so I'll link it down below too, see if they still have it and see if I can find it, because if you're looking for a brush holder, this one's super cute. And it's nice and heavy, and it's glass, so it's good quality. So yeah, so that's all I have for this video. If you haven't watched my last video yet, check that one out. I talk more about eye brushes and what I like to use and what I think are essentials for the eyes on getting a look. So I really hope that you liked this brush video and that you learned something today. If you have any questions, just let me know and then I'll get back to you. But it's, like I said earlier, it's really just about experimenting to find like the brushes or the sponges that you like, and then you can really go from there and working with it on your face or your eyes and being able to find out what you like. So yeah, so like I said, any questions, and then just let me know. I will see you in my next video. So